5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. Welcome to the City Council meeting of June 15th, 2023. So glad to see so many people here for the budget. We really appreciate the turnout. Right, exactly. You all have to stay, especially the children. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Here.
Councilmember Lentz.
Here.
Councilmember Mackin.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. Okay, moving on to adoption of the agenda. Do I have a first and a second to adopt the agenda as it stands?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. We will now move on to oral communications number 1. Is there a member of the public wishing to make public comment on an item that's not on the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I have no written comments.
Okay, we will now move on to awards and presentations. Item B, commending the U8 Little League champions, Brisbane Rattlers. Players, do you want to stand? So we can honor you. On behalf of the City of Brisbane on this date, June 15th, 2023, I commend Rob Larson, head coach of the Brisbane Rattlers. For the time and dedication you have gave to the Brisbane Rattlers. Congratulations on winning the U8 2023 South San Francisco Pony Baseball Little League Championships. Woo! You make Brisbane so very, very proud, and I commend you on all of your hard work and dedication. Coach Rob, would you like to say a few words? Yes, please approach.
Oh, he's got the big trophy.
Wow, look at that.
That's ours for a year,
Nice.
unless we can get it back. Keep it, I should say.
Half my height.
I just want to thank the city for providing us with the resources and Ricardo, all the uniforms and materials and location and support to be able to have a nice program like this. I grew up in town and it was not nearly as organized back as a kid. So it's really nice to have that. And then I couldn't do it without the support of my dozens of coaches. And then of course all the kids. You guys tried so hard this year. You worked really hard, and I'm proud of all of them. And yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the city at this time would like to take a photo. So we'll let Caroline lead the arrangement here.
How about since they're all here, would you like to,
Maybe come
Go that
here.
way?
yeah, line up in front of this council dais, and then we'll have like 2 rows of the players and the coaches in the back, and then the council can stand. I'm gonna move this so it's out of your way.
Here, I want to hold the trophy.
Sure.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course. I'm not going to give it back. Oh, I'm hitting the microphone. Okay.
Get in there.
You wanna, yeah, move in?
I'm behind the tall guy.
And then stay there, you have a lot of people.
Proclamation. Okay.
Don't feel pressured to stay. You will not offend any of us. Although we have a riveting meeting planned. Thank you. Bye.
Congratulations.
Guys,
Bye. Congratulations.
that's it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
They're so cute at that age.
I know, right?
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Oh, I'll shake this.
Shake the glove.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
See you later.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, Rob. Bye-bye.
Congratulations.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
And that cleared the room.
Hey,
Yeah. Cleared
where's
the
our
room.
audience?
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going somewhere for cake somewhere.
Pizza party.
But we had a full room.
We did for a brief moment.
So we will now move on to item C, proclaiming July 2023 as National Parks and Recreation Month. Designation of July 2023 as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Brisbane. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for sports, open space trails, swimming pools, and other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation is a leading provider of healthy meal services. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month. And whereas the City of Brisbane recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved that July is recognized as Park and Recreation Month in the City of Brisbane. Parks and Recreation Director Noreen Leake is here to accept the proclamation. I'll come this way.
Yeah, I know. Huh? Do you want us all to? Okay.
I think we're all posing, right? Yeah.
1, 2, and 3. Yeah, you guys are all in it.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to say? No, I'm so glad that the kids and the families could be here tonight so that you
Perfect
can
example.
see their smiling faces and how proud their parents are and the impact that Parks and Recreation has on our residents every single day. So thank
Absolutely.
you all so much for your ongoing support. It's very much appreciated.
Yes.
Definitely. Thanks, Noreen.
Okay. We are now moving on to the Juneteenth proclamation, item D. City of Brisbane celebrating Juneteenth 2023. Whereas on June 19th, 1865, Union General Gordon Granger read federal orders in Galveston, Texas, that all previously enslaved people in Texas were free. This came more than 2 months after the end of the Civil War and 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation freeing slaves in the southern states. And whereas on June 17th, 2021, President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, making Juneteenth the 12th federal holiday. And whereas we join the greater community to observe Juneteenth, to remember the moral stain and terrible toll of slavery on our country and long legacy of systemic racism, inequality, and inhumanity. And whereas we can work toward equality and justice and celebrate the centuries of struggle, courage, and hope that have brought us to progress and possibilities throughout our country by abolitionists and educators, civil rights advocates and lawyers, courageous activists, public officials, and everyday Americans. And whereas we must recognize that African Americans, among other people of color, have shouldered a disproportionate burden of loss through systemic racism that still undermines our founding ideals and collective prosperity. And whereas this nation was founded on the principle that every individual has infinite dignity and worth, and the City Council calls upon the people of this municipality to build an economy that brings everyone along in the name of freedom and through the power of community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council hereby observes Juneteenth, this 19th day of June 2023. Let us celebrate Juneteenth as the day when all Americans were liberated and created equal. It should be a day to reflect, learn, and grow as a community and as a people. Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accountability Committee member Anna Dennis is here to accept the proclamation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If I may.
Absolutely.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you very much for, we've really had a lot of fun on the IDEA committee, and I really appreciate being a part of that. And this, I think, really is a reflection of the inclusiveness and how we've made great strides, not just in Brisbane, but as a country. And I really appreciate accepting this proclamation today. And I just wanted to say that, I found a really nice quote that I wanted to share. One of the things that we know is that no one's free until everybody's free. And so, I think we make great strides toward that. And the IDEA committee definitely is putting their mark there. But Obama said, Juneteenth of victory or an acceptance of the way things are. It's a celebration of progress, which is what we're doing today. It's an affirmation that despite the most painful parts of our history, change is possible. And there is still so much work to do. So thank you for leading the charge with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service on IDEA committee.
Thank you.
We are now moving on to consent calendar, items E through I. Do I have a first and a second to approve those items?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Hi.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Davis.
Aye. Moving on to old business, item J, consider approval of city appointment to the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, BOSCA, and Bay Area Regional Water System Financing Authority, RFA boards. And I believe City Manager Clay Holstein has a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor. Excuse me, my apology. I think, had this conversation at a previous council meeting and looked at some potential candidates. We have an internal candidate, Jerry Flanagan, who I think you know, who is runs our water and sewer utilities, and we believe that he would be a very good appointment, especially on the GBMID side. Not that we're making any announcement on Randy tonight, but you know there will be a point when Randy is ready to move on, and he's been our staff representative from BOSCA to BOSCA, and we think this will be a good continuity of in terms of somebody being appointed to that position.
Yes,
Excellent suggestion.
council questions?
No.
No. Okay, public comment?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay, council discussion? hear
Excellent comment. Excellent choice, sorry.
Brisbane Senior Shuttle. Including this shuttle in the call for projects for fiscal years 23-24 and 24-25 was based on recommendations from the Peninsula Shuttle Study adopted by the Samtrans Board in September of 2021. Among other things, it proposed that Samtrans and Caltrain no longer sponsor shuttles, and that Brisbane's midday shuttle was the last shuttle being sponsored by Samtrans in 2023. In speaking more with Samtrans staff and reviewing ridership reports, it was discovered that the cost to maintain service levels for the next 2 years would be $151,000 in fiscal year 23-24 and $155,000 in 24-25, and that the average cost per shuttle rider was $55 per day. The call for projects required the city as a project sponsor to contribute 25% or approximately $40,000 for this first 2-year funding cycle. Based on previous shuttle performance and costs, the city has decided not to apply for funding for this route in the next call for projects. Since January, city staff has been researching alternative transportation services for our older adults. And although they don't directly replace the shuttle, they do serve as a viable, secure, and personalized transportation option. So city staff was first contacted actually, I should say that the mayor at the time, Councilmember O'Connell, was first contacted by Peninsula Family Service in 2020 to share with residents about a new Caltrans-funded Got Wheels program. 13 residents signed up for the program as we shared that information out, which 5 since July of 2022 are still active. Got Wheels members can arrange for a $5 one-way cab ride where they've partnered with Sarah Yellow Cab to provide on-demand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week service. Each month, participants are able to take up to 6 one-way trips or 3 round trips for only $5 per one-way ride. Destinations must be within the geographic area, which is 12 cities from Brisbane to the coast and down 101 through Burlingame and San Francisco International Airport. And I'll note that on March 27th, 2023, Peninsula Family Service staff closed the Got Wheels waitlist due to capacity being reached, and we relayed this to our seniors and posted it on our website. They plan to reopen that waitlist on July 1st. So some feedback from the users. Over the last 6 months, I've spoken with seniors on Wednesdays at the senior lunches and on the days they've gathered at the Sunrise Room to talk about the various transportation options that serve Brisbane, such as Got Wheels. There's also a shuttle service out of the PJCC in Foster City that goes all the way down to Stanford Medical Facilities in Palo Alto, and our very own Brisbane Village Helping Hands group, which offers transportation services to its members. Those that use Got Wheels find it to be very convenient as it's door-to-door service. They can call to schedule a ride at any time. They use most, if not all, of their rides, and those that aren't yet members of Got Wheels express wanting to become one once the wait list opened. So the one-year pilot program before you is $12,000 for the next fiscal year, July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, and that would ensure that Brisbane residents are able to come off of the wait list and receive a membership card. And so if approved, they would have that ability starting July. Once again, I'd like to just thank Heather and Charles, who are on Zoom, and also to the program manager, Sherry Carol Moreno, who I've been in contact with about this potential partnership of expanding the Got Wheels program in Brisbane. And with that, I'll take any questions that you have.
I have questions.
Maybe on the wait list, so as people move out of town, that's why there's that 13 to, well, you have to be 70 or older, which is about 10% of the Brisbane population currently.
But do we have a limit of 10 people, 15 people, 30 people? How many Brisbane residents will this program be able to benefit?
It's up to 10 new members and then supporting the existing 5.
Okay, so a maximum of 15 members of our community would be allowed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they told me up to 10 for this amount.
Pardon?
They told me up to 10 for the 12,000
10 new
contribution.
people.
10 new people.
So up to 15 people
Correct.
for this amount. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just doing some quick math, if 15 people took 6 rides a month.
Here.
Oh, she's got it. Oh, I don't know if this looks like my math. Well, if it was 15 people taking 6 rides a month, right? 90 rides a month.
Divided by 1,000.
90 rides a month times 12
Or-
months in a year, 1,080. And then 12,000 divided by 1,080, we're looking at like $11 a ride, plus they pay $5. So we're subsidizing what, 200%, I guess? I don't know. We're subsidizing, double the price. And we're giving 2/3, they're giving 1/3. We're giving $11, they're giving like $5.
Yeah, when I talked to Sherry, they have a cost that's increased over the last year. So for them, it's a cost of, I believe, and maybe Heather or Charles would like to clarify.
Perhaps I could clarify a bit.
Sure.
So the average ride is well over $20. Some could be much bigger if they're going from, but what we do is we could have more than 15 members of Brisbane. We will still have our existing wait list. We're just going to be able to prioritize 10 new members onto our wait list. So we'll have at least those members of Brisbane prioritized, and then everybody else could join as with the other cities as they work through the wait list if there's more. In addition, if there's more members on the wait list, we'll reach out so we're in communication so we understand, so you understand where all the members of your community are with regards to this program, because it is such a valuable program to reduce loneliness, isolation, and increase opportunities.
Go ahead.
If I may, so the 5 people that are on the program, the additional 10 would just be waitlisted and not necessarily be included in the program at this time. Is that correct?
No, those would be prioritized to be included as soon this month or next month, as soon as we could get them in.
Okay.
Once approval. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So our overall capacity for service in the program will increase by 10 individuals.
In our portion of the program or in your program overall?
Overall.
So with
And
all the
your
communities
portion.
that you serve?
So both it will increase both Brisbane and overall. But so not necessarily in other cities, they will be in the existing program. We'll just be able to prioritize 10 additional residents as they come in, and we might have to do some outreach and work with your office, with the city to do that, to make sure people understand the opportunity here.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I would like to ask what the eligibility requirements are for someone to be enrolled in the program or to be on the wait list.
It's just 70 and above.
So there's no income requirement, no,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay,
That is correct. There's no income requirement.
okay, thank you.
And I think there are also, like Sarah Yellow Cab has different modes of their transportation. If you needed to have, say, a wheelchair or something to come with you, then they have different transportation options to serve those needs.
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to thank you, Caroline, because I know that you've worked so hard on this. This is something that you've been, trying to advocate for our seniors for quite a long time. I know you reached out to me and trying to come up with, various ways to provide mobility for our seniors that don't have it. And what I really like about this program is that if there's a senior who doesn't have family or doesn't have friends that they feel comfortable with, to reach out to help them, this provides that mobility and independence, right? I just think of my own mom. I mean, she's still driving. She's 91. She'll probably drive till she's 100. But having her independence is so important to her. And that's what, to me, this program does. And so I appreciate you bringing it to us and advocating for Brisbane to be part of the pilot program. I was at a commute.org meeting this morning, and I mentioned it to the board, and some of the board members who knew of this, were really positive about about this service. So thank you for bringing it to Brisbane.
Cliff, did you have any questions?
No, just wanted to highlight, the hard work from our staff
Okay.
person.
Does
Caroline.
anyone else have questions?
I do.
Okay.
So basically, if it's $12,000 a year with 15 people, it's $800 per year per person enrolled, with a maximum of 6 trips per month. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good deal. Given our options and how it would leave our seniors who didn't have anything else, this is a really good deal for us financially, and it's obviously a very good deal for them financially.
$11 a ride, about
It's
approximately.
a no-brainer to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if the ride is normally 20 and there's 11 or so dollars coming from the city and $5 coming from the resident, where is that extra $4 coming from?
We also receive funding from Measure K and Supervisor Canada, as well as MTC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
I think one thing that bothers me here is the vetting. Because if there's a wait list and someone's aggressive and they get on the list, and maybe, they're on a fixed income, but there are some on even very, very low fixed incomes, I would like to see something vetting. We know about our Brisbane residents. We have them on subsidies with water and sewer, that they be given some sort of a priority, because this may be an extreme hardship for some, and to others, it's a convenience that helps them have extra money for other things.
I would also say that I think Brisbane Village Helping Hands has a really good idea of because their number one request is rides. And there are, your mom is driving, right? But there are a lot of seniors who can't drive at all, and they have to get to the doctor regularly. They may have injections or, need to see their doctor on a very regular basis. And so they really rely, right now, many of them are relying on Brisbane Village Helping Hands to get to those critical appointments. So is there anything that would prohibit us from creating some type of guidelines around need?
Or at least identifying certain people.
Well, there may be somebody that has a really big need that we don't know about.
Right.
So, they might be able to find out about the program through the Star or through the Helping Hands or the Sunrise Room or something. But I think that having a fixed income, and maybe having a limited resources to secure a ride, like no family around. I know that there was some very good criteria that the county established through the meal program that happened during COVID.
Mhm.
So maybe that's something that could be replicated. What was that program called? Does anyone remember?
No, but I know what you mean.
Where local businesses cooked meals and delivered them directly. Heather, do you have any comment on, have any other cities come up with maybe more stringent protocols on eligibility?
Not at this time, and I think the program you're referring to is the Great Plates program.
Yes,
That's it.
Great Plates.
That's it.
There we go.
But so with this addition, we intend to serve all the residents of Brisbane on the wait list. So regardless of their income, if there's more that come on, we can communicate that to you so you make sure, and we can prioritize if necessary. We can have that conversation, but we don't do that currently. But we would be open to further discussion.
But you mentioned there's only one person currently on the wait list, right?
That I know of.
Is
I
that
don't-
your understanding, Heather?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But it could grow tomorrow.
And working with the seniors on a regular basis with some of these things, there are so many people who either slip through the cracks or miss any kind of information that we send out. I think our outreach needs to be really robust regarding this to make sure that we don't miss the people who actually really need it. I mean, there's a lot of people over 70 who would go, oh, whoop-de-doo, this is great. But there's a lot of people over 70 who really don't have one extra dollar in their pocket. So I would be, with my colleagues here, really, let's try and find out who they are so they don't miss out on this, as opposed to me when I'm 70, I can probably afford a cab ride. And why should I take that cab ride over someone who really can't afford an extra 20 cents a day?
Okay, so maybe before we get into discussion, we can open it up for public comment.
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I think you can probably sit if you want to. Okay. So we'll now open it up for council discussion. Who wants to start?
I think it's a good program. As we go forward, if we have the wait lists get too long, I think we could look at making it income restricted or need specific. But I think that is not what's on our plate before us tonight. And I would make a motion to approve this, and we'll see how the need grows.
You could also make it restricted on, I don't know how Heather feels, but possibly on overall number of rides per month so that more people have the opportunity, but I guess we can approach that when the time comes, cross that bridge when we get there.
It's probably that would probably be something that
It's a little bit
the people providing the service would, because they're accepting Measure K funds and other funds from the city and the county, they probably have other parameters and they need to go by what their program is rather than start tailoring it for our specific needs.
Yeah.
So, I'd be hesitant to put that in at this point. And I think that, we should go ahead with the program. It seems to be, something that's beneficial. And then see if we need to try to tweak where our applications come from if we need to, because the need is too great.
It sounds like based on the earlier questions, it seems like there may be consensus, so I will consider a motion, or if there's anyone else who'd like to make a comment at this time, feel free.
Yeah, I thought what you said, Terry, was spot on, so I'm in agreement.
I think Terry made the motion. I'd be
I'll
happy to
second.
second it.
I did make the motion.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Second by Councilmember Cunningham.
Yes.
All right, roll call vote. Councilmember Cunningham.
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
And Mayor Davis.
Aye. Everyone's favorite portion of the evening, it is the budget workshop.
This is your favorite portion of the year.
Oh yeah, the year, excuse me.
So, thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. First of all, I appreciate your willing to spend a night on this and your attention to the detail of what we'll be presenting tonight. And I also think first want to thank city staff, particularly Carolina and her department. A lot of work to put this together, and of course, a lot of work throughout the year to oversee it. Also want to thank the department heads and the various staff members who participated in the development of the budget over these past few months. So I'm going to start with just a very quick overview. We got a lot to get to tonight, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. A few weeks ago, we had our financial advisor here to talk to you about the bond issue that we're going forward with. And in his conversation with us, and he's somebody obviously that deals with financial markets and is kind of our outside eyes and ears in terms of how we're perceived. And his message to us was that our first and second and third message was reserves, 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 that we have a really, really strong story to tell in terms of our reserves. What I put on the screen is where we've been in over the last 5 years. And again, reserves are the culmination of how much more money you bring in versus how much money you spend over time. So that's basically how you develop reserves. We've gone from 11.1 million in 2019. 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 are all audited final numbers. We're projecting 15.87 million for this year. That was in your, as part of your mid-year update. And then we have it coming back down to 14 million in the 2024 budget. And again, that's the budget. There's always kind of a distinction between what you budget and what you end up with in terms of actuals. Actuals, as I always look at it, it's the end of the game, it's the final score of the game, and it kind of really tells you what happened during that year. So that's a very good, strong story, and one that I think we should always keep in mind, because I think it makes a lot of our decision-making more rational and easier as we go through. It also makes borrowing money cheaper. It provides a go-to when we have emergencies. And as you know, we have categories for these reserves. Carolina will go through that with you later on. So in terms of developing this year's budget, next slide, please. We've taken a pretty conservative approach. There are new positions being recommended. The only exemption to that is the permit tech in the planning and building department, which was part of the technology plan. So I wanted to continue on implementation of that technology plan because that's over a 5-year period of time, and it's really, a lot of it is really to kind of to get us up to speed on our IT services or RT uses within the organization. Second goal was to maintain our overall debt service at about 1.2 million annually. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. It's approximately 5% of general fund revenues. There's nothing particularly magic about that number, but I think it is a kind of a good, sound number to try to maintain our debt at as we move into the future. We do have new revenue sources, as you're aware, that were sent to the voters and approved by the voters last fall. However, it's a little early to really be sure that we're going to generate the revenues that we believe we're going to generate, or at least that we brought to the voters, which was about $2 million for the sales and use tax and about $250,000 for the hotel business license tax. It's just the data's just too new at this point. We're actually still in the first quarter for the sales tax. We're in the first half a year for the hotel tax. So a year from now, I think you'll have a much better sense of what those revenues are going to generate, and a lot more confidence in terms of those projections. And then finally, the hotel industry continues to lag, and that looks like that's going to be something that's going to go in for several years into the future. The mayor and I and Mitch Bull had a conversation a few weeks ago with the Hotel and Visitors Convention Authority of San Mateo County, and there is, as you all know, San Francisco is suffering significantly for conventions. They have other issues, but the issues in terms of conventions is just being very slow to come back to San Francisco, and a lot of our trickle-down hotel use comes from that. So that doesn't seem like it's on the rebound anytime soon. So we're projecting a fairly sluggish recovery in that area, and those will be in the numbers that you see from the finance director. Also a reminder that this is the second year of a 2-year budget. Next year, you'll actually get to doing 2 years at a time. The reason we ended up doing 1 year at a time last year and then finishing up this year was both the transition to our new accounting system and still some lingering effects of COVID in terms of just getting work done. So this is still a 2-year budget process, with the idea that in the off year, you would do a deep dive into your capital improvement program. Because we've been doing this for, last year, the regular budget, and then again this year, we did the capital improvement review last fall. I would suggest we do another one this fall so that we don't get too far behind on that. And then at some point, you do kick that into the off year. Next. Oh, there, thank you. And then finally, we've been working on a 10-year budget projection. I think in the past you've seen 5 years. This is a planning tool. I think it kind of gives you kind of a guide in terms of where you want to go in the future, or just how confident you feel going into the future, or what issues you might face. We plan on having the first edition of that before you for review, kind of a draft edition this fall. So just be aware that that's going to be coming to you. And I think that's my comments.
Thank you.
Okay. So
Next is
with that,
Carolina.
I'm going to turn it over to the finance director unless you had any questions. And the departments will be coming up one at a time with regards to their budget, and then we can have a conversation at the end of the evening.
Thank you, Clay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. And I would definitely want to reiterate a big thank you to staff, the department heads, their assistants, and we also have a new senior management analyst that's in the city manager's office who also helped. Rose, thank you. So let's get started on the budget overview. So Clay started. I'm going to give more of a procedural component to the budget, just for the benefit of any viewers. Whoops, sorry. The purpose of the budget is to take the resources that the city has and to allocate them to meet the results required by the community and directed through the city council, adhering to our city goals, which are listed there: fiscally prudent, safe community, community building, ecological sustainability, and economic development. Next. The budget process, normally it's 2 years. So we're developing the programs to meet the established goals. Staff develops the proposed operating budget, looking through the needs of their division and departments. They take those ideas and meet with the city manager with their proposals of how they want to allocate resources to the programs that they're doing. City manager will review, and he takes overlooking the whole city, because obviously each department has their view and their needs, where the city manager has to weigh across the city what he determines, or what the city manager determines is beneficial to present to the council. So then council reviews and adopts the operating budget after review. So just a reminder, as Clay pointed out, this is the second of the 2-year budget, so it's covering only 1 year. And he talked about the capital budget, so let's move on to the next slide. We've been going through priority-based budgeting, which is a different approach. It's not something new per se. It's just another method of budgeting. And what it does is looks at the resources of the city, takes into consideration any restrictions that we have, or compliance requirements that you have, and it really takes each of the areas of each department, the resources, the personnel, what do the community, what are they asking for, and it takes all of that information, and instead of looking at it just as a line, it's looking at it and taking different components of a program, and then you can analyze those programs and determine, do we want to do this program? Do we need to do this program? Is it a program that maybe warrants some resources to move resources between programs? So it's a different way to look at it, and the actual governing body for the accounting of government accounting is actually taking a lead that this is the direction that they want to go, as opposed to line item budgeting. So we were already in this method, and so we're already ahead of many other cities looking at now their programs, their costs on a program level. So we defined the programs, and it started back in 2016 over to 18 when we were looking at all of the various programs over departments. In 18 to 20, there were 46 programs over 34 divisions identified. This last budget, now that we're in the second year, using Resource X, which is a budgeting tool that allows different perspectives and slicing and dicing the data to look at the programs and evaluate them. We reduced from last year. Evaluating some of the programs were a little too granular, so we reduced from 400 to 300 programs over 36 divisions. And we continue to measure and evaluate over the year and as we move forward. So the focus, again, that you'll have from each department is program-based, and it takes a look at the resources, and we are showing this year dollar and percentage of each program for your benefit to see how much of the cost in those perspectives. So moving on, as far as what's going to be, what we're requesting for approval is really the general fund, but you're going to also hear some other funds tonight. But the primary responsibility of council is to review and approve the general fund. So from 23, whoops, sorry, I have an error on my on my slide. The right side should be 22, 24. But revenue grew 2% is what we're proposing or budgeting to $26,696,000, And then expenses, unfortunately, also going up at a more rapid rate at 12% of what will be presented tonight at 28,599,000. So with that, in 23, we actually are projecting a surplus. We had budgeted for fund balance usage, but we're projecting a surplus. And with the increase of the revenue for the budget, we're still expecting balance usage, but it's actually lower than we had initially anticipated. So we're seeking usage of 1.9 million. The next slide shows the revenue and expenditures over the past years, and these are budgeted revenue. The left side is actually, those are all actual, up to 23 projected, 24 budgeted, but it's revenue versus expenditures. So we've been actually, on some of these years in the past, we had budgeted using fund balance, but if you notice that the solid bar is actually the revenue exceeding the expenditures for those years. So staff has found ways to save. Many times it's through staffing, which is the biggest cost of, and so if a position is not filled, or if there's a delay in filling a position, many times that's how you'll see some of the savings. Or if there's been a program that's delayed in implementation. So there's a variety of ways that we'll see. If you, 2020 and 2021, during the COVID years, a lot of that had to do with, without some of the programs that were budgeted, we couldn't perform them, obviously with the close down. So you'll see even steeper variance between the revenue and the expenditures. So last year, or in 2023, rather, last fiscal year, you'll see we are proposing, or we were expecting that the expenses would be less than the revenue.
So Caroline, before you move on, so we can't see the dates because of the
sorry.
bar thing, but the last columns, right? Those are projections,
Yes.
right? So everything else is real
actuals,
but this is what you're projecting. But many times, when we've done the budget, we've had, it looks like the last two columns, and then in the end they flip, and the solid blue is taller than the expenses.
Right.
Right. So is there a possibility that could occur, or?
It's always a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a combination of
because I didn't think we would get there
managing
last year, and it happened.
Right, managing expenses, and then the flip side is also revenues. Sometimes your revenues are more than we expected. 2021 is a good example with the extra sales tax money that we received. So that shot up that variance.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Madam Mayor, if I may. Just a really quick point. The revenue for 2021 was because we're B2B rather than B2C consumers in this town. Could we explain that to the general public, just so people understand why that wasn't so horrible for us?
Right.
Because B2B was very strong for us.
So several things happened during COVID. As other cities closed down their brick and mortar, there was a lot of online sales, and we had in the construction business, which is one of our bigger sales tax components or contributors rather. Those were very strong during the COVID years. And so we had a online retail business that did very well. And then also, as the other cities in the county reduced their sales tax, we got a larger portion of what they call the county pool. So it was a one-time, unfortunately, it was a one-time shot, but it did contribute to that increase in revenue. So, and we do have a lot of industry here that is business to business, and as those businesses did well during COVID, then we benefited from that.
Thanks. I think it was really important to point out.
And you'll see 2021, that revenue year went high. 2022, without that component, went back down to what we would normally expect for revenue. That was a big contribution. Thanks.
Okay, continue. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I?
Oh, continue.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
okay.
So next are just the major revenue sources that we're projecting. Property tax, sales tax includes the 2 million of the new sales tax, sales and use tax component. Occupancy TOT 1.9 is still below the 3 million that we used to see with the hotel industry. Clay also mentioned, as far as the lag, that we're still not seeing it the full rebound. And then we also have a different methodology for one of our hotels going forward. So it's still unclear on how much we're going to see the reduction going forward. Business license tax of 5.2 million includes the various business license taxes that we have, like liquid storage and recycling. It's a little different. So going from the next slide are the expenses that the departments are going to be presenting. For the general fund, total is $28,599,000. Each department is going to present their new request, as well as the programs that how their costs are being distributed across the programs. And also, again, we're showing the percentages and dollars. So for 23-24, just some considerations that we want to make sure to highlight. Last time we were here, we were on the verge of contracts expiring. So the employee contracts, the bargaining groups, they renewed late last year. But instead of a 3-year term, it was a 4-year term going through 2026. The city manager has since announced his retirement, so there's some transition that's going to happen. And part of the employee contracts included some items that were to encourage some retention for employees to help with this transition. But those are always considerations that we need when you're looking financially on how that transition can impact your activity. Hotel sector unknown. Inflation is still an interesting topic with all of the different rate increases during the year and how that impacts not only the markets, but how that impacts costs and for the various programs. The continued construction on Sierra Point has been helping with the permitting fees, and then also eventually with our property taxes. Going forward, unfunded liabilities for PERS, it is a major component for our staff that we have to contribute for their future retirement. And so that is an area that we keep our eye on. And then finally, there has been some increase in healthcare liability insurance and workers' comp costs. Last year, we had a lot of workers' comp cost, unfortunately. And so what happens is the following year is when you'll see that they'll increase the premiums And so we saw double digits in some of these costs. And that's then spread across to all of the staff who have to absorb that. And finally, again, this is just to reiterate the fund balance policy that we have here in the city has been a strong policy. So to prepare for something that can happen, a recession, we have 2.5 million that for when we look at the end of the year, how this works, at the end of the year, the anything that falls to the fund balance, we have to, before we could use it, we carve out these three items so that basically we're trying to say we don't want to touch this because we're going to need to use this for future. And the first one is a recession reserve, 2.5 million. The second one, it's for unanticipated events. You want to say it could be for, you know, if something drastic were to happen in the area, a 3.5 should carry us through a few years. And then the last one is the annual fluctuation that takes 5% of your income and 5% of your expense, combine that, and that's your third component of your reserve that we set aside. And so our recommendations tonight, after you had a chance to listen to the departments, we feel that our revenues are strong enough for us to continue to provide the necessary services that the community is asking for, and then also for the services that are required of us. We're requesting that we actively fill open positions in order for us to be able to meet the needs of these programs. Continue with the 25 Park Place improvements that we've already heard in previous meetings, and we will be funding with public money, with bonds and potentially other financing. Continue with building permitting system technology project. This is a component of the overwide project, technology project that we had, but this is the next phase of it. So we would like to continue with that. And then we want to hold off on the pension reserve funding until the end of the year so we can determine how much we can contribute towards the goal of 500,000. And that's the budget overview. If you had any questions, or I'll move on to the first department, which happens to be finance.
I think I'm gonna have questions after each presentation, so people don't have to keep coming back and forth to the podium. But my question for you with the Resource X software and 400 programs down to 300 programs, do you off the top of your head have any examples of like what programs were identified that were cut?
They're not cut per se. Yeah, so what it is emergency response is an example. Where maybe one department is saying, okay, out of this emergency response, I'm gonna look at it as like 5 types of emergencies that we're going to use and call each one a program. And then this, when we were looking at it last year, some of the costs that were attributed to it were like less than 1%. And so what they did this year was like, let's take a step back and maybe some of these programs, we can combine them. Okay. And where it's not so much a program per se, like it's not like a program of, you're thinking maybe a park and rec program. It's more of like in accounting, we have accounts receivable and accounts payable and cashiering. So maybe we're going to combine some of these so that's how we reduced.
Okay.
Yeah. Question though.
You have a question, right?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you, Carolina. I just would like clarification. There's a statement in the staff report here that says the net use of the fund balance for fiscal year 2023-24 is therefore anticipated to be $1,904,000. That is actually a loss. it means we have more expenditures than revenues, which means we are borrowing from reserves. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's not that we have a bigger pot of pool because we got more revenues this year. It's that we're now going to have expenditures anticipated to be greater than revenues.
Greater than revenue.
Okay, and second question, and so that's almost $2 million. Have all the expenses from January storms come out of the unrestricted and available amount of 880,000?
Not all of the expenses for the storm have been incurred yet. And then also, we are seeking funding for a good chunk of those expenses.
Okay, and the sales tax increase is now going to stay the same because that's been built in. And when you did these projections, our tax base is kind of flat. It's staying the same. We don't have new business to draw new sources of tax revenue from. And when that sales tax went in, as I recall, I think it's important to note, one of the reasons was we negotiated new salaries with our staff. And part of the need for sales tax is for the entire general fund to have more money because we have built-in wage increases every year that we have to come up with money for when our revenues are down, correct?
Or,
Or
Fixed.
flat.
yeah.
Right, okay. And so the last question, unfunded liability in here talking about annual funding of $500,000. Do we know yet, and I know you said we have to go back and examine the amount. Do we know how much our unfunded liability is right now? Any idea? Because you're talking about 10 years to fund $500,000 annually. Do we have any ballpark how much we have unfunded?
Yes. It does fluctuate.
Yes, I understand that.
Because of the market.
Yes,
And so every year is evaluated again.
yes.
And repriced, so to speak. So we are in the millions, yes. So I can give, off the top of my head, I apologize, I don't have the number, but it is in the millions
Okay,
that we have to cover,
okay.
so. And it does reprice, as we described in the staff report, CalPERS had originally put a price of 7% that they expected for their investments. In the past few years, it had dropped down to, in some years it was negative returns. They reduced it down to 6.8, and if it doesn't, any return that's less than that, we have to cover.
Okay, so when the market is down, the cities are expected to
make
put
up the
more in.
difference, yes.
So if we go through several months of a bear market, great, no problem. But if we go into a recession, we have to come up with more money to keep it at a level. And with that, when you have employees retiring, does that not generate, we have to contribute more?
We have to cover the costs of their retirement, yes.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you very much.
Can't retire. Sorry, Claire. Gonna have to stay.
I'm not sign,
Just so you understand, I mean, it's,
Wait, speaking of the mic.
the retirement costs are paid over the lifetime of the employee, right? So there are, the unfunded liability part of it does continue whether you're active or retired.
yes.
But just because you retire, doesn't mean that all of a sudden a bill comes to the city.
I understand that.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
I have a question and a follow-up that you asked about the storms. Because, some of those costs haven't been incurred, like you said. and we're applying, and then maybe this is like in your, Randy, just maybe in your presentation. Do you want me to just hold off on this for you?
No, please, go ahead and ask. It's not in my presentation, the
Okay.
specific question, I don't think.
So then we're applying for reimbursement to some extent for these. So how have you budgeted for those circumstances, not knowing if we're gonna get that money? Have you just have you budgeted as if we're not?
Well, some of it is absorbed, I mean, it's in current year.
Okay,
Right. Because it incurred in
right.
23. But for the future, my understanding was that we were holding off on some of it until we had an understanding of the projection for, okay. That's gonna be capital expenses, though. It's not part of operating,
Okay,
yeah. So,
got it. Is there anyone else who would like to ask?
Well, I have a follow-up on that then. So we have storm drains full of debris, and we're gonna deal with capital improvements later? So now I'm starting to wonder,
So on your June 29th agenda,
right?
you're going to have an item for you to approve us going forward with the storm drain cleaning project. We still have a few months, to be able to move forward to get it done before the rainy season. If for some reason we don't get the money, and we've got a couple of different, I think 3 different sources, then it would probably have to come out of that reserve fund that for unexpected events. We don't anticipate that happening, but we will have that item on the 29th, because that is the one project that we absolutely have to do before the rainy season.
And could we end up where if we apply for a grant and maybe they're processing it, but we need to do those storm drains before January, where we'd have to pull it out of our emergency reserves
It's not
to
really
pay
a
for
grant,
it?
it's the FEMA process. And
Oh,
we're
it's
anticipating
FEMA,
it,
right,
sir.
right.
That's correct. It's not a grant. It's money. It's a cash reimbursement, but it is most likely that we will float that for some period of time. We will do the work and we will have to pay for it before we get reimbursed.
And it could be up to how much?
Right now, I'm just for the storm drain cleaning alone, I'm estimating 1.7 million.
Can we make that point extremely clear to the public? There's been many requests over the last few weeks for some pretty fluffy things that I would love to say yes to. And my point to people is, looks like we never had a storm. The mountain looks beautiful. Brisbane looks gorgeous. But I want you to cast your eyes 6 feet down and imagine just for a moment that you're looking into our drains, whether they're a 2-foot drain, a 4-foot drain, or a 6-foot drain, and every single one of them on the flatlands in Brisbane is 50% full of gravel, debris, and rocks at this time. Not a very pretty topic to talk about, but when people are asking for, fancy new kids programs or fancy new bike things or whatever the heck it is, we need to hammer home to people that we have to front that money, whether we get it back from FEMA or not, and that's coming out of our money until we get that money back from FEMA, if and whenever. And we can't say, no, we can't clean these drains. We know what could happen next year, but we need to make it abundantly clear to people that we're not saying no to the fancy new toys because we want to say no. We're saying no because we have something that is extremely important, so you don't end up with somebody's poop in your backyard if we don't do this and get it back up.
We'll take the meeting or the item from the 29th, and we'll do some public outreach on that so that people
I
understand.
think we really need to
There is a
hammer that
risk.
home.
There is a risk. Federal government.
That's maybe a trick question.
No, it's not. For a dollar amount in that range, a planning horizon, I would go for 1 to 2 years.
Okay, so out of that, likely out of this into the next time we look at a budget, we'll be seeing that reimbursement.
It's certainly possible. I
Possible.
would think that by the next time you're looking at a budget, you're going to have a much better understanding as to whether or not that amount is going to be funded. And as the city manager mentioned, we are going after three sources on it. We've applied to two different federal not grant programs, but just reimbursement programs or emergency reimbursement funds. And we've also filed a claim with the County of San Mateo and just notified them that this was your dirt.
Yeah. It's more, we'll have an understanding of the magnitude of the financial impact that that storm has caused on the city of Brisbane when is all is said and done after applying for all reimbursements. Okay.
Can I ask one?
Mhm.
I have one more general question that was asked of me by a member of the public. When we get into departmental budgets, if during fiscal year 22, 23, they did not use all the funds in their department, are those carried over to the next year, or is it just end of the year and you reconfigure what is budgeted to their department?
It's carried over into the fund balance, but then the subsequent year, then you have to go through the budget process of determining what resources you want to use for that coming period. So it becomes available. So like in the sense where the 1.9 million that we're looking at now, it's basically using something that was an overage from a previous period.
So it went back in the pot, in the
correct.
general fund? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Do you have questions for?
I do, thank you. Thank you, Carolina. On page 42, so I guess it's page 2 of 5 of the staff report.
Oh.
So you have the breakdown of the different taxes and, you know, income.
Wait, clarification where, can you
Page,
state
and so
that?
it's the packet page 42, but page 2 of the staff report. Yeah, okay.
42, okay.
42,
We're all on the
42,
same
yes.
page.
So, you know, in talking about the general fund reserves, you mentioned that the sales tax is expected to continue to increase. So just kind of looking at the projected 7,942,000, that's greater than when we had COVID, isn't it?
That includes the 2 million of the new tax.
Okay.
So so it would be the 5.9 is really the sales tax from we're previously accustomed to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that projection then is put into that figure there. Okay.
Yes.
And then, you know, it was mentioned, you know, that the TOT, you know, is still struggling, right? But it is significantly higher than it was during COVID.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've grown, we've seen it increase more rapidly than expected, but it's still well below pre-COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know, just looking at the actuals from 2021, or 2020 and 21, and then 22, 23, yeah, it's about $1 million more. But you're estimating that it'll probably be kind of a plateau for the next several years.
Correct.
Okay, but not a decrease, but more
No.
of a plateau.
Yeah.
Okay.
We still expect some growth there.
But it was 3 million beforehand.
Before.
So
Yeah,
we're
no,
down
absolutely.
$1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's still short.
It's, no, for sure. Yes. But, you know, we did pass the sales tax, and that's an increase of revenue that wasn't there prior to the pandemic.
Correct.
Let's see, page 44. So I'm hoping you can walk us through this, Carolina, in regards to the recession reserve. So in 2021, there was the 2.5 million. And then in 2022, we used those funds when we were working on the budget, and we took the money out, almost the full amount, right? And then, but by the following year, the 2.5 million was we were able to replenish that.
Correct.
So now we're looking at their projections for 2024, and we're going to use it again. So, kind of walk us through like how we were able to replenish it, and what's the potential likelihood of replenishing that based upon the data that we have today.
So it is, again, if as your revenues are exceeding your expenses, then it all becomes available again. Net of some restrictions that you have outside of these three, because there are other restrictions on reserves. But that's, and if you make a point that the first portion of those revenues that are in excess are going to come back to these pools.
Okay, so so when we pulled that money out of 2022, we, as a council staff, the goal was to replenish as quickly as possible. So we're going to take this money out. Using your crystal ball, I know that's not really fair to you, but based upon how things are going, when do you anticipate that fund would be fully funded?
Again, it could be within the following year, depending on how strong those revenues come back the following. And in essence, some of the expenses that we have right now, they're one time, right? So managing those expenses can help contribute to replenishing first.
Okay, so because what I'm getting at is that the reason why you're saying that, hey, we could pull this out is that you're confident that we can replenish it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the following page, page 45, talking about the pension trust fund reserves, resuming the annual funding of $500,000. And the goal is to get it up to $5 million, which then would cover 2 years worth of unfunded liability payment. And, I'm all in favor of having those reserves to be able to deal with unforeseen circumstances. But it just seems like a lot to me, and so I was curious to know, are other cities in San Mateo County, doing something like this with the pension trust fund reserve that has this significant amount of money in it?
If they have trust?
Yeah, are other cities, do they also have these pension trust fund reserves and funding at a level where it would cover 2 years of unfunded liability payments?
It's actually been encouraged as of late. You're hearing and seeing a lot more discussions and workshops and stuff to have trusts in place. Because of the fact that once you put it in that trust, it's not touchable for anything else. And one of the things that was always a concern with pension money is that, if it is not put somewhere protected, that it could be used for other operations or other expenses that a city can go through. So by preserving it into a trust, then at least you have that for the employees going forward, and then employees that have retired, that it's there. We haven't had to use it yet. We are building it so in the case where if the recession got really bad, that we can go and pay our annual amounts through those trusts, because that's what it could be used for.
Instead of using the general fund?
Correct.
Okay, so when you position it like that, then that makes sense. And then, so resuming the $500,000 payment, in a sense, part of the I guess you could say, I mean, correct me if I'm not, looking at it properly, but some of the reserves, the recession reserve, some of that's being taken out, and say, for example, 500,000 is going into this pension reserve
The trust.
right? I mean, if you were to kind of say, yeah, that's what we're going to do, but there's so many other things.
So right now, it's like, it is definitely a plan that we want to do, but we're not actually putting in the 500,000 yet into the current budget.
Okay.
Because we're already recognizing that we're going to be exceeding our revenue. And so we want to see if we have savings, then yes, let's move forward with continuing to fund it.
Okay, so this isn't something that you're recommending now. It's only if when
We definitely
revenues-
want to stay on track to keep funding it.
Okay.
But it isn't part of it yet, of this
Okay.
budget yet.
And then, I was hoping you could just, just give a brief description about the indirect costs, because they're found throughout the budget, and so, like, what does that mean?
So the indirect costs are actually costs that it's from the general fund departments that offer services to the rest of the city, and calculate what those costs, for an example, payroll. It's a cost to all the various departments. And so we attribute a fee, so to speak, a rate by head count that we allocate across. But you don't charge the general fund because it's general fund to general fund, but we do charge the other funds as part of their expenses is an indirect cost. And it's basically looking at it, a cost that they would have to incur if they were to have their own administrative or their own payroll services. It's a cost they would have to incur. So we're providing that service from the general fund to them. And it's also like the usage of the facilities, so utilities, all of those costs are then put into a rate, and then it's charged to the other funds. And they're paying for it, and then we're seeing it in the revenue. So it's like a transfer, really, between funds.
Internal billing?
Correct.
Okay. All right,
Internal services.
All right, great. I mean, I'm not sure if we're going to go over this with the different departments, and I know that we're going to talk about two of the other funds, but on page 47, I'm just looking at like costs, and then also the marina, costs, in about raising fees. Like we're apparently our fees are pretty low in these two areas. If we did raise fees that were more in line with, say, other cities, other marinas in the county, how does that impact, your budget?
Well, again, will be, it's more the general fund that we're presenting tonight, because utilities and marina funds have to be self-sustaining. They will be presenting their expenses so you can see their operations, but their revenue is really supposed to be covering that.
Got
So
it.
it's not taken from the general fund unless there's a request like a LIRA is one where the general fund offers to pay.
Okay. And then just one last thing. So, we receive, money from BDI for the reimbursement, staff time and other types of resources to deal with their project because it's so big. And then it was talked about like, grants, granted the FEMA is a reimbursement, but there are other types of grants out there. How does that all get worked into when you're trying to put together this budget?
For grant revenue, unless there's something known, we don't typically budget for a grant. If we do, it's pretty minimal. But again, unless we know we're applying or by now we know that it's coming type of thing. And then as far as like the BDIs and those types of development agreements, a lot of those are reimbursements paid through a different fund. So the only thing that you're going to see through the general fund operations is the admin fee that we collect from them. So anything that we put up, like pay out for them and getting reimbursed, that's not flowing through the general fund. That's through a different fund.
Oh, okay. But in indirect costs, right? I mean, we are applying, you know, right? So how does
The
work?
indirect costs that we charge are to other city funds. So like utilities, marina, and there's two other special districts that are city. Those are the ones who get charged the indirect, not other development funds.
Okay, so the reimbursement then from BDI for, you know, for the time and effort and other resources that we put into their project, we bill them for it, we receive the money, but that goes into a different.
If it's the
fund.
administrative fee, that falls in the general fund.
Okay,
If it's we're paying like a professional service on their behalf, we might be fronting the money, but then, and we front that through a different fund, and then that reimburses it so that it's never flowing through the general fund.
okay, no, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
But let me take a step back. It's not necessarily fronting the money because a lot of times they will give a deposit. That's part of the agreement. They give a deposit that is supposed to cover those expenses, and then we're replenishing those deposits.
Any other questions for Carolina? Okay. So we will move on then to our first department presentation.
Okay.
Finance. Are you
This just
staying
has
up
to
here?
be me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So finance, and I still have it on the. So she's putting that our mission. Finance delivers reliable financial and information technology services. We're responsible for facilitating the planning, organization, implementation, control, coordination, and direction of the financial and technology policies and programs of the city as established by City Council and the City Manager. So we are requesting a budget of $1,676,968, and that is covering programs that are fulfilled with 7 full-time employees. The areas that we cover are accounting, financial management, budget, audit, cashiering, billing, payables, payroll, treasury management, business licenses, information services, and risk management. So those are the various, the bigger areas that we cover. There are some other smaller programs not listed. So out of that budget, it's basically, you're seeing the higher programs that we have. There's a lot of administrative costs because we serve the general city. This computer system that we have here is more of the accounting computer system, not the central services. But we also have the IT staff that's in the finance budget. So these are, you can see the various programs we have: payroll processing, cashiering, accounts payable, accounting, and a lot of other programs. We're still fine-tuning some of this as far as allocating the time as we're transitioning staff. So we can take questions at the end if you have questions on the programs. But moving to the new items, what we're requesting this year, there is an increase over last year's budget we would like to transition our business license program, and we received some quotes. In order to do that transition, there's going to be an implementation component that is a bigger ticket for a one-year cost. The budget that we are using with Resource X, we also have to compile a budget book. And so we have sought out a company that can help us build not only a physical book, but it's more of an online tool that you're seeing different cities have, so that the citizens and the and council, so please, but citizens and other interested parties can review our budget and be a little bit more interactive. And it is very difficult to manage a lot of these different departments. And with some of the software, it will just facilitate the process, so that if you make one change, it flows throughout the whole system, as opposed to a lot of manual process. So, and then also there are different areas within the accounting now that require certain things that they would like to see in their budgets. The cities provide information in their budgets. So this software will help us with that compliance to make sure that we're covering all of the areas that we need to. Next area is a contract management compliance software. Again, GASB, which governs the accounting standards for governmental entities. The requirements has been aggressively expanding over the last 10 years. And so this software that we're seeking is just a way for us to stay in compliance and review our various contracts to make sure that we can analyze to make sure what falls under these new GASBs. And then finally, every other year, we have to pay for retirement plan valuations. So there's a cost to that. We try not to have to do it. We don't have to do it every year, so we take advantage of not doing it every year. But this coming year, we're due for the valuation. So these are the items that we're looking for.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell?
So I'm sorry, in our packets, we didn't get what your current budget was
Okay.
and what your proposed budget is. And that makes it really difficult to look at differences. So did you say you had a 60,000 increase over last year? Because that doesn't show on our paperwork.
Correct.
Departmental.
Correct. Of the asks, yes.
So it's a 60, you said it was 60,000?
From last year, yes.
And
You have the current year of GRC. So for finance, current year is 1,616,676, sorry.
what page is that on?
It's 52.
I'm on page 52, and I have,
No. You'd have to look on page 47.
Oh,
well, you did, we're not putting them side by side, so that's the difficult portion. And we don't have
You don't
the
have last
breakdown.
year's, correct. You don't have last year's.
We don't have a breakdown.
we can't see
And-
deltas.
So there's no way to see where any differences are. And that's a problem when we're trying to study a budget, that we don't see what you're changing in your budget.
So what we wanted to do was highlight the requests that everyone is making. And we were definitely going to provide a comparison. And we can definitely provide it in the next meeting. But it was more of each department providing what their requests are for this workshop. But I hear you.
Because it's really hard to look at what any differences are when you don't have anything to compare it to.
The delta.
Unless I was to go back to,
No,
you
you
know,
don't
a
have
year
to do
ago
that.
and try to dig up data and look at it in a different way.
Correct.
So, and on your particular request, the 30,000 in travel and training, what is that encompassing?
So we have training that we have to do for certification. And then there's also training for technology for our system. There's training on different the ones we normally go to are accounting type training, payroll type training, tax type training. So there's different components to that. And that's part of it.
And these are programs that you have to go off-site to do the training.
Correct.
They're
So
not
there's
offered.
travel involved. Sometimes it's interstate, so, or down in different parts of California. So there's lodging and airfare, week-long trainings types of those types.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else for Carolina? Okay.
So the next we have is HR,
Versus?
Where they put them in.
and Clay will be doing HR.
This didn't have last year's either.
So I think we'll provide you at least the gross number from last year to this year as each department comes up. You'll at least have that, and then we can provide the actuals or the budgeted from last year at the next meeting.
Okay.
So the Human Resources Department, sake of time, I'm not going to go read the mission statement. I think we can, if there's any questions about that, you can certainly ask that, and we'll just jump to the more of the fiscal part of it. So the overall budget is $851,000. Again, no new positions. We have 3 full-time and 1 part-time person in our Human Resources division. I think that's consistent with at least the last 5 or 6 years.
And what page are we on?
So the,
It's only on.
I don't see one
Yeah.
for Human
I couldn't
Resources.
find it
Oh,
anywhere.
yeah, it got sent.
it got sent late. I
later.
apologize for that.
Can I get a
had
copy,
left it out.
please? What page?
54 is the total number of pages. They're looking for the specific page it's on.
Yeah, I only have 82 pages.
I don't have a Human Resources budget page.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
got
either.
emailed
Okay,
to us.
hold on. We're going to get you we'll get it for you.
It got emailed to us. Ooh,
And it's for,
would.
to move this along, let's go to
We
the next
could, yeah,
department.
that's what I was just
Okay.
gonna say.
We'll come
So
back to this.
circle
Okay.
back. Okay, well, you're up for city manager. Do you wanna skip that one too? Okay. Okay, let us get to the page.
City manager we're doing first?
Okay, we can do city manager first.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Page 49.
is everybody there? Oh, wait.
Thanks, Angel.
Oh, there you go. Thanks. This is for,
Thank you.
City manager's budget. Okay, so the overall budget for the city manager's department is 1.5 million. The areas covered include city administration, communications, economic development, and risk management. So as for our program breakdown, which is on the next slide,
Administration is at the top at 28%, followed by City Council and Commission support. Next are programs that our Administrative Management Analyst and Senior Management Analyst, I as your Communications Manager, and our Digital Media Coordinator are assigned to. You can see the various publications, programs that our office is responsible for. For this next fiscal year, the new items include half of the cost for EPIC professional services. EPIC is our internal staff committee, stands for Equity Plus Inclusion Committee. And the professional services cost is for staff DEI training. There's also diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And then there's innovation committee and programs projects that got moved to the city manager's budget. It was in a different part of the budget last year. I think might have been public works. So it got moved into the appropriate place this year. There's increased travel and training slightly, 1,000, I believe, for specifically the new city manager position. And the last item is what we heard under new business item K today, the Got Wheels contribution, which is pending. And that concludes the city manager's budget. If you have any questions.
What's the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget?
For city manager,
Yes.
Could you repeat that?
355,194,
Do you have percentage?
30%.
Can we get a breakdown when it comes back to us on what those items are?
Yes, yeah.
It
So
would-
the part of that position, a part of that increase is the assistant city manager was or departments, and now it is sitting solely under the city manager's department. So that's the majority of that cost increase.
It would be really helpful if what we're seeing on the screen of programs, if we had that, because all we're looking at are just line items under the fund. And it really kind of helps to see how those funds are distributed to different programs, because we don't see any of that detail. I'd like to see that for every fund, actually.
Also, I think some pie charts for overall city spending attributed to each department. I think we used to do that. We could see, obviously like police and fire, right, is like a
Right.
big, or
I know-
public works is like a big, really big.
It is definitely part of what we will be giving you, and then it's for the 29th. Again, part of as we were rolling out of COVID, it was a little lighter of a package, but we understand that you want to now see the comparisons again for the first part of the meeting. So we apologize for that.
Also the dramatic difference that COVID made in 2020, which just dropped off. I think it would be beneficial to see what we're budgeting now versus 2019, where we left off, and what we call normal. To see, are we doing the same now, or have things changed completely where something dramatic has changed with programs? Just to see how that big difference, because that was a time marker.
Madam Mayor, if I may also, I think it would be really helpful to the public as well, because I've heard a lot of information from various people that they want this and they want that, and they want all of these things as though COVID never happened. I think we really need to push it home that this was the trajectory that we were on. This is where we were at. This is what our income looked like. This is what our expenses look like. This is where our happy place back in 2019. And then 2020, we crashed to the ground. Our county crashed to the ground. We had to come up with all of these different things that pulled money out of budgets. The library JPA were feeding people. I mean, everybody spun on a dime. What was the favorite term that we used?
Pivot.
Pivoted. Everybody pivoted and did these different things and pulled money out of budgets that money wasn't supposed to come out of. And now, because everything looks bright and shiny again, everybody thinks that we can just snap back to where we were. I think we need a reality check, and those comparative numbers are going to help people understand that we can't just snap back to where we were. This is going to be a road to recovery. Some of it's steep, some of it maybe quicker than others, but I think these comparative numbers and these comparative graphs and things are going to help people understand that when they say to me, can I have this? And I have to say no, it's not because I want to say no, it's because we got $1.7 million just to roto-root our drains. And, we need to be able to put those kind of realities out, per se. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have another question on this, on the special department expense for 36,000. What is that?
Can I step in? I'm sorry, because we had tasked each department to provide it at the program level, and then we're asked for line item information for your packets later. So do we want to change anything to maybe come back so that you have that information?
So do we not know what that $36,000 is?
No, we do, but it's just, I just want to be fair to the staff who have prepared at a program level. And you're looking at something that's a line item.
I'm not sure how to look at a budget without diving deep into things. And this doesn't give the information that I need to make a decision on increases or decreases. I'm still a little not understanding the 355,000 increase, where the deputy city manager is now attributed to this instead of working on different programs.
He
I didn't
allocated
think-
across different departments.
Right,
Yeah.
but I didn't think we had a deputy city.
To approve a budget before the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay,
So that would be June 30th.
June 30th, okay. And just the sense that I'm getting, just from the council, is that maybe the information that we have here is hard to
So
maybe
why don't
go
we
through it.
just go through, that's fine. I think I know where you're
Yeah.
going. If the rest of you want to do that, we can delay tonight and bring it and get the information you want and come back. But let's spend some time now making sure that we understand
Exactly.
what that information
Mhm.
is.
Yeah, and that's why I'm
Okay.
asking about the time.
I mean,
'cause
I'm
maybe we might
perfectly willing
need,
to do that.
Another meeting, I know we got one meeting coming up, or whatever you feel is,
Well,
appropriate
what
for
I would
us.
Staff needs
suggest,
time, too.
I'm going to be out of town next Thursday, so maybe the following Tuesday, and then we could have Tuesday and then Thursday, we have scheduled. I don't know if that works for you guys. Maybe we could do Wednesday, or maybe we can come in early on Thursday and start at 6
Just knock
o'clock
it
or
out
something.
in one swoop. It would be a long night. Yeah, whatever, Okay.
I'd be okay with a long night. I'm not here next Thursday either.
Are we going to get this information in advance?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I-
That
I
would be the
think-
idea.
I think in fairness, we need a good 7 days, because I don't have
Okay.
every day to look at it.
Caroline, I think we can
It's
probably
going
do
to
that.
take time for staff to prepare.
Exactly.
Then they're going to need to get it to us. Then
Exactly.
we're going to need to study it. So I
So
think
you-
the
you
29th
want-
is today.
Okay, so in terms of information, we'll aim for next Thursday to get the information to you.
Yes,
The following Thursday would be when the meeting's at.
that's fine.
Does that make sense?
Is this an evening meeting? Because I have a meeting that day. and I'm going to be in the south part of the county. Are we talking 7:30?
Yes. Well, we had originally scheduled it for 7:30.
Because if it's earlier, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get here.
Okay.
Are you talking
Well,
about
we could-
PC? You might have to
Yeah.
miss. You might just have to miss.
This is a pretty important meeting.
Yeah, but this is our budget, so.
I understand. I'm just saying,
I-
if we have any latitude in the day.
You could do Wednesday night.
Are we interviewing firms?
No, you'll choose, we had a workshop set up for the 29th, 15, 20 minutes for you to choose the firms you want to interview, but not the interviews themselves.
Oh, okay.
So what time are you thinking on the 29th? Just so I can try to check.
Well, I
this.
mean, based on our conversation right here, I was thinking maybe as early as 6, but, I understand you have a conflict,
Okay,
so.
no, 6 may do it. Let's just try to do that and see if I can.
Okay.
Excuse me, through the mayor, boss, my apologies, just a reminder, that Public Works has at least 3 public hearings on the 29th agenda.
Yeah, that's why I'm talking
Okay.
about starting
Yes,
at
sir.
6.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we do have some agenda items that we need to do that evening also.
So maybe we can do those first, and if you need to come in, we can put all the other, maybe we can take care of all the other business to give you like some leeway in coming in a little bit later, and you could come in at budget time. You could come late. Okay.
In terms of information, you want actuals from or last year's budget, and then maybe actuals from the year before. I know, I believe you
I
said.
heard 2019 is what I heard.
So actuals from which would be the 2018, 2019 year. That's the last full year before COVID.
Yep.
And then budgeted from last year, and then budget request from this year. So that'd be 3 years.
Because we don't know actuals. It's not been audited. That's what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, so budgeted then.
Yeah.
Well, or
Projected. We have
Projected.
We have projected for this year. We have budget requests for next year. And then we have actuals for 19.
it's just, in the past, we've had
A binder.
a lot more information on the departmentals.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I mean, we've been trying to move to a little bit different format.
Making it easier on us.
And, I think we've also had a couple of years where we did this over Zoom, and I think maybe that was there was a different information needed.
Well, and during those times, we were in radically different scenarios where we didn't have much choice on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so I got those 3 budget years.
And do we need percentage change? Do you want, or just numbers?
I just want to see side by side what's
Okay.
changing, what is in there that's new, and what our projected was and what they're asking for now, so that we can really see what the differences are.
Okay, and we'll try to, as best we can, to tell the story of those changes so that there's a narrative to go along with that. So-
Because having the department head just discuss what the changes are without any numbers is really difficult for me to wrap my financial head around.
Okay, fair enough.
So you want the new items to be highlighted, like color or something?
Well, what they are and how much they are, not just, oh, well, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and there's no number attached to it.
Okay, and then also pie charts.
If there's
Or
something
graphs, some
really
kind of graphs.
dramatically different too, Madam Mayor, I think it would be really beneficial for us, but also to explain to the public who are going to come back to us and say, what happened here? I mean, we know some of what happened here, but, there were things that were dramatically different, and people took on jobs over the last few years that changed their job description dramatically, and therefore probably their budget as a result.
There will be, just to be, alert, I mean, there's going to be significant changes between 19 and 23, because we've made some organizational structural changes and stuff. So we're going to have to tell a story along with just providing you the numbers.
Yeah.
So we'll do our best to try to do that for you.
for me, and I know that this request came from another council member, what happened in 2019 or before COVID isn't as important to me as to what differences we're doing this year from last year.
Same.
Okay, fair enough.
Just because 2019, we may never go back to what we
That
were
world doesn't
pre-pandemic.
exist.
Yeah.
And we may never have those opportunities again or those things happening. So I think if we see it, for me, and again, I don't know about others, for me, seeing what we're doing now and what we're proposing to do with money is a bigger thing for me personally.
I am in this. Yeah. I mean, it was just because Karen for the public, but I mean,
Well, that doesn't have to be in great depth, but we are going to be responsible to answering questions to the public. Why was this, and it's now that? And if we've got an easy answer, we're doing things differently, or we had to spend money because of X, Y, or Z.
Right, or
simple
we had a
explanation.
program that we did before COVID and now it's no longer relevant, or we replaced it, something, or this
have
was the
to have an
cost, now
answer.
we're adding new technology to this department. So those are significant changes.
The
I don't think
technology
the
plan
public is really
is
ingratiated
good
in the
example.
budget deeper than us. I mean, I don't think the general public is going to say, well, in 2019, you guys spent this amount of money in Park and Rec, and this year you're spending this.
There are certain people who are. There are certain people who are. They're already saying.
So
things.
do we want 2019 then, or not?
I don't need it. I don't need it, but I mean, I'll feel free if the rest of you feel like that's
I
significant
mean, it's
to you.
actual, so we can do it. I just,
available.
just warning you that they're probably not going to line up, as well. The 22
I think it's
and 23
confusing,
will
personally.
probably line up fairly well. 2019 is probably going to be a little off because, it's 5 years
Yes.
we're doing things
We're
different.
gonna veer off into conversations about things that were so far, like, it's just like, I think it's irrelevant to now, to what's happening right now, personally. To talk about 2019, it's like, it's a totally different time by comparison. We've lived lifetimes since 2019.
Seems like it.
Feels like it.
If staff brought back something that was familiar to previous budgets, how we received the information, would that be good feedback for staff? I mean, it seems like we're used to getting the budget analysis a certain way, and this is different, and the difference is
Yeah.
not what I guess is helping us. So if they were able to provide something that was similar,
We used to have a big binder, basically, and it would show last year, this year.
okay, so something if you could go back in time, Clay, in that
I know.
format, if it's
We
possible.
can get you a big binder if you want.
Yeah, just drown us. Okay.
Just kidding. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think it's going to be that hard to get the 19 information, only because it's
available.
the
If you
actuals.
Want to.
Yeah.
It's
available.
really, it's
Really
not
easy.
even, it's for me mostly if there's been a big change in a program. Not the entire department, but if there was a big change in a program from 2019 to now, that would be interesting to know why. Either more money, less money, what's going on, what happened?
And I
But from
assure you, if we
2019?
don't,
From
we're going to be
2019?
asked.
Or
Pre-COVID.
Because haven't we discussed all those large changes already every year since we've been looking at the budget? Like we've already
You would have, yeah.
we've already looked at big changes in budgets like we're doing right now.
Well, how about we do this? Caroline and I will work on this. If we'll see, maybe there's a story to tell between 19 and here in terms of what we're doing different, and where our expenditures have risen, and we'll try to lay that out for you and give you the bulk of the reasons for it, the bulk of the answers. I mean, the technology plan is a perfect example. I mean, that was not something we started until, I think, 21. So that wasn't part of the 19 budget, and that's about $500,000 a year that we're now spending. Plus, there's been at least one additional position that I can think of that we've added because of that.
Right, we hired more people.
Yeah, we certainly have hired more people since 2019.
Also, I mean, we've been roundabout referencing it, but there's been 3 public comments sent to us about a pump track. So I want to know, how much do we think it costs to build a pump track? Because we have requests to budget for a pump track, and I need to know, well, how much, we're working with, accurate numbers. How much is a pump track even to build? Great.
Between 400 and 600,000.
400 and 600,000. Will you put that in the packet, please?
And we're not gonna fund our unfunded liabilities.
No, we're gonna discuss it. We need to have that information so we can have an accurate conversation about what things cost in the real world.
Just one additional thing to that is that that's the kind of project you would normally talk about in your capital improvement
Right.
plan. It's not in your operating budget.
Right. But since there's been 3
Understood.
public comments, I know it's gonna come up. I know when we deliberate.
Being
that's
discussed on Facebook
That's
right now.
coming up. So, we owe it to the public to talk about it.
They asked us to add it to the budget.
Okay, so are we still going through every
No,
department's
I think
thing?
there's,
think we're good.
let's not do that tonight.
Okay.
Unless, you want to. And we'll bring back the information as you've requested, and we'll start the meeting for 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 29th. We do have some business items that we'll need to do, so we'll do those up front, and then we'll jump into the budget.
I also think maybe, there are obviously some questions we ask specifically for the public to hear the answers to, like I just did.
Sure.
There are some questions that really can be asked between staff.
The owner. And I will mention one thing you didn't.
We
is-
have,
No. We have in the Bay Area.
oh, yeah.
Westfield Center. And I'll mention one thing that you didn't. There are some weather prognosticators saying we may have another stormy January. And if we use that emergency reserve fund, we better think long and hard about it.
Okay, well, I don't want to get too much into discussion because, we're still evaluating information at this time. We really should be asking questions. But because I know that it's coming to have a discussion about a capital improvement project, I think it would be good for us to just get the list of all of the capital. So if that can be provided along, we all know what it is. We've, looked at this several times, should be easy to put in there, but, that discussion needs to happen within context. So, for the next meeting, do we still want to go through and have every department give a presentation, or do we want to receive the budget and review it and then ask questions that you have from analyzing it? Do you want to go department by department with each department giving a presentation to you?
I would be happy with questions. If we've got time to analyze it, I think we should have plenty of pre-meeting questions that we could ask of staff, so we're not going page by page by page through something, trying to analyze it on the fly, and then discuss things that we can't wrap our heads around on the night.
Personally, it's much easier for me to digest written material
Yeah.
than it is to have someone give a presentation. Slides are moving very fast. If I have a packet that I can review over a number of days and make notes in the margins,
So,
to
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that as the list of the items are already prepared, we can easily put that into the package for
I
next
think
time.
for me, when the departmental came up, and we only saw a couple brief ones, and there are additional items, maybe have a tag next to them or why they're important, that this is, government required. A new government required service. It's a new this, it's a new that. And so we know why the big asks are there, and there's a dollar amount next to them.
Right.
So that it's, when I got the initial departmental, and it's like, okay, we're asking for these 4 things, and it's an extra 60,000, but what's costing what in that. So knowing that and would be a big help to me. And I can look and say, oh, police is asking for X, and that's why this has changed so much. And so I wouldn't have to hear the explanation from the department.
Right. And like,
That takes a lot of time to have every single
Right.
department come up and give a presentation, you know.
But if we have that in advance, then we know
Yeah,
what's
instead of,
coming.
but orally at a meeting is what I'm saying.
yeah,
Like, we can just
we
bypass.
we will have the items requesting with values assigned to them as part of your package prior to the meeting.
Plus, it'll take the heat off everybody relative to the public as well.
The public can access all those documents and review
Yeah,
everything
and
too.
then if we have questions or somebody asks us questions, we can have it answered by the meeting time.
Okay.
Make it easier on you.
Is everyone okay with that format for the
That
next
works
meeting?
for me. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. Moving on. Wait, I just should open it up for public comment.
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So we'll continue this and we'll move on to staff reports. City managers report on upcoming activities.
No report tonight.
Okay, we will move on to mayor council matters. And internally with city committees, our report says there were no meetings from May 27th to June 9th. So does anyone have any county meetings they'd like to report
I have
out on?
one.
Okay.
And I do too.
So, I attended the SFO roundtable meeting, and we were informed by the airport that they have completed their runway paving. So that is done, and they're back to using both runways. They did also say that they were back to pre-pandemic flights, and that they're heavier and more loaded. So, we're back to having quite a bit of noise, and it's been a discussion on Facebook about the noise, and I tried to jump in and let people know about the runway changes, and some people asked about specifics at other airports on what they're doing about runway takeoff noise and landing noise. And I tried to explain that those options aren't available to SFO anymore because of how the FAA has rebranded themselves against, making special exemptions. And, I got a little pushback from an ex-council member that was pretty snarky. Not unexpected, but pretty snarky. But at that last meeting, SFO or the FAA has asked everyone, from citizens to cities to airport roundtables, to answer a questionnaire about noise and how they can deal with noise better, what metrics they should use for noise, what is an annoyance to people about noise. And this document is available to all of our citizens and all of our cities to respond to this. The roundtable did a really good job of writing out very specific requests from the FAA in response to this questionnaire. We spent a couple hours going over the responses and making corrections to make it a little more impactful and let the FAA know how much airplane noise affects our communities. And so I am going to get together with staff over the next few days. We have till the end of July to submit any kind of response to this survey. And allegedly, all of the survey results, all of the comments are going to be analyzed by the FAA. Certainly, we don't know how in-depth or how much to heart they will take them and if it will get us any relief. But I will get together with staff and maybe we can put something on our website that we can put a link to this FAA request for information about noise and noise effects. And I invite everyone out there to put their own 2 cents worth in. And maybe the roundtable is suggesting that cities also respond to this in a formal way. And I will get together with staff and see if there's any way we can try to put our own spin on it where it's more directed from our community instead of from the entire roundtable. Some of the things will be very similar to roundtable responses, but I think that it's something that maybe if the citizens feel that they have an ear to someone who may care, that they will, you know, take ownership of some of the noise and some of the complaints and, you know, how we can deal with this. But again, I think it's important. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity from the FAA asking to get input from communities.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. You know, I mean, there's already routes that they can do that they've already implemented over the last several years that have been beneficial. When they, you know, now I forget the names of the runways, but the ones that, you know, they head north and then
the
they
bay.
make the turn, right?
Yeah.
And you know, we when they would come over the mountain really close, we would call that the buzz cut, right? And we got a lot of the buzz cut with the work on the runways. But those planes can easily make the turn east, right, on the east side of 101. And that goes over an industrial area, and it doesn't impact anyone. The planes heading east over the bay and making the turn, if you're out at Sierra Point, you can see a lot of those planes making the turn before they even get to Brisbane. But of course, then there's also, if you can't make that turn, okay, don't have it all come over one place, spread it out, and, you know, so that everybody, you know, they share the load, but it isn't like so impactful. Okay, you get one plane or 2 planes, and then, okay, you don't hear anything for a while because someone in San Francisco is getting it, or someone in Daly City and Bayshore is getting it. Yeah, so I mean, like, are they, you know, are they acknowledging that the routes that they've already established can work, but they're not using them for whatever reason?
Well, I mean, you were on this roundtable for a long time, and a lot of it is the airport itself is trying to encourage the planes to take off on certain runways and try to do the right thing on flying quiet. But once they get 10 or 12 feet off the ground, Tracon in Sacramento takes over the control, and they can just send them anywhere they want. And they just want to get them off their screen. And so try as hard as you want to get them to fly the prescribed routes. When there's heavy traffic, which we're back to heavy traffic, the air traffic controllers up in Sacramento are just going to move them out to get them off their screen. And so it makes it very difficult for the body that we sit on and the airport to control how noise gets thrown out into the communities when they don't have there's no recourse for them flying the prescribed route because it's all about safety.
For sure. But
it,
you know,
it
like,
makes it
yeah.
very difficult. And yes, we have made, you know, we did get the FAA and the airport to work together a route that goes up the bay and out the gate. And when they're able to utilize that route, it saves us a lot of noise. But again, the FAA only agreed to let them fly that route between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. because that's when they consider noise to be really terrible for sleeping people. And 1 to 5 is not when,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly it's when people are trying to sleep, but, you know, we would love to get that implemented in a wider timeframe.
And the majority of those planes are 11:45 when we're all just going to sleep, are those heavy, old, noisy cargo planes from one of our favorite places we like to order goodies from. So maybe that's our next step, is we don't order from those places to try and cut down on the aircraft, but they don't care. They've been told 1,000 times. I've reported one company many, many times.
The other thing that is happening and that was included on this survey is that they are going to be discussing supersonic, because they are trying to get supersonic back. And they're going to be talking about drones. And they address some of that. And what the roundtable response on drones was that they don't recommend any unmanned package delivery between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., but that they are going to abdicate any regulation to the cities impacted themselves. So it would be up to Brisbane to say no drone package deliveries at all, or certain hours where they're going to do. And that's going to be there. These are questions in this noise survey about these kinds of operations, and air taxis, which are basic personal helicopters, and what the noise will be.
Another factor, at least in the past, has been Oakland flights getting getting thrown off course early. Tracon's doing that with Oakland flights. Then they're managing all that airspace. So if an Oakland flight is not flying its waypoint, then that can cause SFO flights. So it's all, then you have to vector those. You have to throw them on a different path too. So it's all interconnected. The waypoint that you're talking about over the bay and through the gate, is that stick?
Yes.
STIK?
It's a different one. They're calling it, it goes out to Gobs. So it's got a different name, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name right now.
It's all like 4 letters,
It's all in foreign language, yes. Anyway, that's my report out, and I just wanted to let them know about the FAA noise study.
I have a quick and fun report out.
Okay.
Okay, so a very quick and fun report out for everybody in the county is that the San Mateo County Library JPA Board, of which I am the vice chair, we looked over our budget for over a month. And then on Monday, we approved that budget. And smcl.org, if people want to go look at that budget, shows some incredible new offerings to every single person in our county. And I really encourage everybody to go look at what's in that budget. And they're expanding services and looking for recommendations. So please take a look.
And then, I had a community.org meeting this morning. I won't go into the details of the meeting, but this might be helpful for you, Colleen, with your PCE meeting. So we conducted the majority of the meeting where members attended in the conference room at South San Francisco City Hall. But we also, bless you, we also had 3 members go to Menlo Park's council chamber. And this is, the existing Brown Act rules, right? Or if you're on vacation, right, you do the remote thing and you put the notice outside. So we tried that, and it worked really, really well. But of course, they were on Zoom, those 3 in that location. The public could go there, right? So perhaps there might be other members of PCE that are looking to do something similar, so you don't have to drive so far.
I can tell you that the legal counsel of PCE looked into that, and legally, we are not allowed to do it.
Well, yeah.
And several committees, different commissions around the state have said, well, we're just going to do it. But there's legislation pending, there's a bill going through that would allow that if you live 40 miles outside of where the meeting is taking place.
Yeah.
PCE is 38 miles.
Yeah.
And for most, and I'm probably the farthest in the county to travel.
Absolutely you
Well,
are.
well, community.org is the
Yeah.
same, right? It's a countywide thing. So, but we're just using the existing Brown Act regulation, right? So this isn't pending legislation. This is existing. And our county council, Joan, I'm playing on Joan's last name, but she is okay with us doing that in a public location as long as it's properly noticed. So,
The problem they ran into is it had to be either an emergency or it had to be,
You're traveling.
you're
city
you're
business.
traveling on city business.
AB 22449.
Yes.
What we-
So our legal counsel for PCE said it doesn't fall under any of that.
yeah, and this, again, this is a, I know, I just.
It's all up in the air. Thank you. I wish they would let
Brown
it go
Act
through.
regulations,
Yeah.
right? Not the pending ones, or not, the, it's just the old ones, so, yeah. But it's not a Zoom meeting, it's just a remote location. All right, that's it.
Okay. Do you have anything?
No.
Okay, so we'll move on to written communication.
Madam Mayor, we received written correspondence from Dana Dilworth regarding the Planning Commission comments, Nancy Laxomana regarding the budget workshop, Park and Rec Sierra Point and Crocker Trail improvements, Michael Barnes, please forward to City Council regarding budget hearings, and Carolyn Monroe, request for funding bicycle features on Crocker Trail.
Okay. Oral communications number 2.
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:13.